Hi guys, welcome back. It's Vicky with Making Moments and Memories, and I am gonna try a little laminator hack, actually a couple different versions. So what I wanna do is take one of my laminating sleeves and I want to put some clear sleeves inside of it so that I can make pockets. So I can make my own clear pockets. So this is Carlton cards. So there must have been cards inside of here. It has two, kind of like a little folio. So I think what I'm gonna do, because it's too big really for my sleeve, so it's going off the edge and it just fits inside the long sides. So I'm gonna cut this down because I'm gonna make two separate pockets anyway. Like once it's laminated, I'm gonna cut this in half anyway, if you can kind of follow what I'm doing there. So I'm gonna get my laminator heated up, and I just have a Scotch, I don't even know what version this is. I don't know, but I'm gonna turn it on, get it heated up. Let's see if the Scotch numbers. So if you're curious, it's model TL901X, and I've had it a long time, and it is pretty efficient. And I do buy the Scotch brand laminating sleeves. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut, and I don't mind that tag's on there. It's pretty well stuck on there, so I'm not going to mess with that. So I'm gonna cut these in half to be about 5, I don't know if you can see, 5 and 1, I'm gonna cut it to about 5 1/8. So my pocket is still here, so it's open. And this is kind of, I don't think that's gonna matter. There's a little bit of plastic left over. Let me cut this off with scissors. I don't think it's gonna matter, but I don't want it to be gapping if this leaves a gap. So we're just gonna cut this off here. Little extra piece of plastic. All right, so that's gonna be one side. This one, same thing. We're gonna cut this off to be about the same, like 5 1/4, 5 1/8. Okay, so now we are going to remove my cutter and we'll bring in the laminator. And then I'm gonna put these pieces inside of the laminating sleeve. So they'll fit like that. And actually, I'm gonna put the openings facing each other. And then that way I can cut right down the middle of that laminated pocket, hopefully. Yeah. All right, so let's get these in the sleeve. Put that flush, so that's my opening, and I have an opening there. And I'm gonna put it sort of to the end, but not all the way, but I want room so I can cut these in half and have two separate pockets. That's my plan anyway. So that's a little bubbly, but I'm not gonna worry about it. I think I'm not gonna worry. We're just gonna run it. We're gonna run it through. I got it pretty well flat. It has a couple bubbles, but okay. So if you can, this says ready, so it is lit up. We're gonna run this through. And I am gonna try one with designer series paper also, and we'll see how that comes out as well. I'm gonna run this through once and then maybe a second time just to see how. I want to make sure this plastic gets sealed inside of this laminator. Yeah, I think this is gonna work. And I have so many of these clear sleeves from, you know, things that are packaged. So I'm gonna try a couple versions of this. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna run it through. There's just that, where that bubble was. I'm gonna run it through one more time. And I'm picking, the next one I'm doing, I'm picking really thin paper because I don't want anything to be too thick going through this laminator. I just don't want it to jam inside of it. So I'm going with really thin paper and a laminating sleeve and a some more of those plastic packagings. So I'll show you that in the next hack here. This went a little off. It's not quite in the section to laminate, but I think it'll still be okay. I was more worried about this part here. Okay, all right, let's cut these open. I'm gonna set this laminator aside. I'm gonna leave it on just so it's already heated. So I'm gonna cut each pocket on the, where it was already opened. I'm gonna cut that right on that opening. So let's see if it's, yeah, so it's gonna be right about there. And then it should, yeah. Ooh, love it. Okay, and that does not bother me. So I have a little pocket. Let's do this one. Same thing, I have to cut where that opening was. So we're gonna do that side. And yep, cool. Okay, so that gives me two separate pockets. Now the next one I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use designer series paper and some clear pockets. So for example, these are from the Dollar Tree when I bought some glitter paper. So that's the sleeves I'm gonna use for this idea. So let's do this one first. So again, this is gonna be too long for the laminating pocket. So I have the laminating sleeve and it's almost, oh, so this is where this opened. Okay, I didn't realize it opened there. That's actually, okay, that's, I kind of like that because let me see how long. So that could be a very long open side if I cut it on that part. What I had planned to do was open it open it at the top, so I had a deeper pocket. But this actually, I think I actually am gonna do it this way and cut it. I'm gonna cut it along this part once it's laminated. All right, so I am going to, let me cut this top off. So there's a little perforated piece here. I'm going to cut right above that perforated line for that pocket. So this was a perforated, so it's sealed right now with that. This part here, I'm actually gonna cut off all this sticky stuff. So I'm gonna cut right on the fold of where that was sealed. So then we'll take that off. So let me see how wide, let me see if that's gonna be. Yeah, so that way it'll fit, if I cut some of that off, it'll fit better in the pocket. Okay, so let's do, oh, what do we want to make this? 8, we'll go 8 1/4. We'll cut that whole top piece off. And then we're gonna peel that off. So now we have, this is opened. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, so now, so this will fit inside my laminator. Well, it's a little too tall. I might have to cut, we're gonna cut this off because it's a little too tall for the pocket. So we're gonna cut off. So this is gonna give me 2 opened ends, but I don't really think that's gonna be a big deal. I think it will still, yeah, so that fits better in there. Okay, now I'm gonna put some paper behind this. So if I do a whole sheet, okay, so we're gonna do, let's see how long we want to make this. And right now I just cut it off so the dots were all showing, and no, there was like a plain purple border. So right now I'm just cutting it so I can just have those lines of dots. And they're a little crooked. There. Okay, so now that's perfect. So I'm gonna fit, so the paper is a little shorter on these ends than the pocket, which is, I'm okay with that. And then the pocket is like 8 1/4. So we're gonna cut this at like 8 1/8 maybe, like just a little shy of 8 1/4. Like that. Yeah, it could even be just a little bit shorter up the top too. So, okay, so now it's just framed inside. Now, I'm gonna put this in my sleeve as two separate layers. Do I want to do that? Yes, because I want this piece stuck and laminated to the back of the pocket. Then I'm going to cut the pocket open So yes, we want this inside of the sleeve as two separates. Okay, so let's move here. We'll move this cutter out of the way. Let's bring our laminator back in. And we're gonna try to center these inside the pocket. Like that. And then hopefully we will get one large pocket once I cut that opened. So get that nice and flat. All right, we'll see if this works. Okay. My paper, I don't like it. It's beyond the plastic. So I don't know that that would have mattered, but let me see if that works. Okay, that's better. So what I'm doing is making sure that the paper is within that plastic sleeve. In fact, it could even get moved down just a little bit from that sleeve. There. So I'm trying to center the paper within the plastic thing that I added. All right, let's run it through and see what we get. And then I was going to try something with two separate pockets with paper, like I did with these. And I was gonna try to do this same idea, but with paper. So we'll see what this produces first. And then we'll try another idea. And I was gonna try it with, so I had three, I was gonna do three separate, but all three of these won't fit. And two will fit, but then I have a bunch of laminating left over, and I really didn't want to waste some of the laminating. Okay, so let's run this. I'm gonna run this through a second time. And then this is the paper we're gonna use for my other idea. It's gonna be similar to this, but I'm gonna do two separate sections. Where this is, I'm gonna cut this will be hopefully one big pocket, which it should really produce the same thing that we just did, but you're gonna have designer series paper. And you know, I should have flipped the paper around. So now I'm gonna have, the outside is gonna be white. The inside will be purple. So I should have flipped the paper, but all right, I'm gonna turn this off for a minute. I just don't want it to get overheated. All right, let's see if we can. Yeah, there's no way for me to get this as the inside. I should have flipped that paper around. Okay, so let's cut off the top of this, and we should have, we do. Did it stick to the, yeah. So it sealed the paper to, I'm trying to make sure it's like permanent. Yeah, that's sealed. And then this is our pocket. I love that. And this paper seems pretty well laminated in there. Yeah. I didn't quite get it. You know, the paper could have gone all the way to the edge of my pocket, but I don't, for a first time, I actually don't mind that. Okay, so this pocket ended up being, in the end, 8 1/4. 8 1/4 by, well, it's not all the way. So basically 8 1/4 by, yeah, I would say like 10 1/2, 10 1/2, 10 3/4 is your full pocket probably. Because if the pocket's to there, yeah. So it ends up being about 10 3/4. So if you're gonna put 8 1/2 by 11 paper in here, this is not gonna be big enough. So we would have to figure out how to get a nice pocket for 8 1/2 by 11. So your paper is gonna stick out a little bit from this pocket. Okay, so last technique that I wanna try is this same idea, but I want 2 separate sides. I want two separate pockets. I don't want one whole pocket. So to do that, I think what we're gonna have to do is probably cut 2 separate pieces. Although this would be enough. One of these pockets would be enough. So this again was shipping, you know, things came packaged in this. Yeah, this is gonna be plenty. So I'm gonna cut this kind of like we did for the first 2 pockets. I'm gonna do the same thing that we did for these, but we're gonna put paper behind it. And this time I'm gonna put the white up so that I mean, you could, unless you want the inside of your pocket to be colorful. I don't know, maybe, I don't mind that, but we're gonna do it with the white on the inside. Okay, so these pieces then, we're gonna cut down and then we will, so if we wanna get, let me grab another laminating sleeve. And these are 8 1/2 by 11 sleeves, but I'm not going to get the pockets to be a full 8 1/2 by 11. But let's cut these at 5 1/2 each, and we'll see if they're gonna fit. So I'm gonna cut that at 5 1/2, this at 5 1/2, this longer pocket into 2. So we're gonna do 5 1/2 and 5 1/2. And then we can probably save this maybe for something else. So these are opened on the sides. These are both 5 1/2 by what size? How tall are these? Yeah, so they're a little too tall also. So we're gonna cut these down to probably 8. I hate to do 8 1/4, but let's do 8 3/4 and see if 8 3/4 will be, yeah, 8 3/4 worked. So this is 5 1/2 by 8 3/4. This pocket is 5 1/2. It's got that crease in there, but again, I don't think that's gonna matter. And we're gonna do 8 3/4 for this piece. Then yeah, then we're gonna do, I'm gonna do this 11 by 8 3/4. And I'm gonna see if this will fit in the sleeve. Yeah, so I cut the paper 8 3/4 by 11. I'm gonna move this trimmer out of the way. And let's move, we can save this stuff for something else. Very cool. All right, so I'm gonna leave this paper flush to the crease side. And then I'm gonna fit this piece that's got the fold, I'm gonna face it down and scoot it to the end. It's almost a little bit too tall. Let me see. So it's just below the paper edge, but it's kind of too, I think it's too far down. So I actually am gonna cut these. So these were 8 3/4. I think I'm gonna cut them to 8, and I think I'm gonna cut them to 8 1/2. And then this one I'll cut to 8 1/2. And then we'll see if it's fitting inside the, yeah, that's good. So now it's smaller than my piece of paper. And then this one will fit here. That's kind of overlapping though. And I don't want it to overlap because I want these to be separate pockets. So I'm gonna just take a hair off this side. So it's ending up being like 5 1/4. And we'll stick that. I just don't want these overlapping. So 5 1/4 is what this one ended up being. So now, I guess it wouldn't matter if these overlapped because I'm gonna cut them at the top because I want these to be like taller pockets. So it probably wouldn't matter. No, because if I cut them in half, I don't want them overlapping because then it'll cut the pockets open. So I don't want these to overlap. Okay, so let's carefully slide this so we don't shift anything. And we will send this through. I'm gonna hold these where they're separated so that they don't overlap. And then the same thing, I'll probably run this through twice as well. Yeah, and then I think this will give me 2 separate pockets. Actually, too, I mean, I could cut them in half, or I could actually, ooh, this might give me an idea. I could turn these into a little book. If this would fold, I don't know if this will be if this will be exactly in half. We're gonna see. Okay, I'm gonna run that through one more time. I think I like the paper on the outside of the pocket. I don't know, we'll see. And then this is the last one I'm gonna do for this video, but I do have some more of those bigger packaging that I cut down. So if I come up with some more possibilities, oops, I don't want that cord getting caught there. Okay, so I had to run it through a third time to try to flatten that out, but here's the finished laminated piece. We're gonna cut it off and we're gonna see what it looks like. And I don't really think it matters whether I cut the top or the bottom. So I'm gonna cut this top piece off. And I should have two separate pockets. No, so that did not laminate. Okay, so here's, all right, learning curve. So these two pockets were not, I cut the sides. They needed to be a complete pocket because now when I cut them, the cut pieces are opening up. So yeah, so that's not good. So it laminated the center, but it didn't make a full pocket because they were cut on the sides. So that's good to know. So it's still a good pocket. I just have some loose clear sleeves in there that I could probably rip out. Well, that's a good learning curve. So they have to be complete pockets. You can't cut them. So for example, like this, they can't be like this opened because these aren't going to stay closed once they're laminated. So that's good to know. Well, okay, that's it for this video, but I might try this again and we'll see if I have success, I'll do another video. Hey, thanks for watching, and yeah, have fun with your laminator. When was the last time you used it? Thanks for watching. Have a great day.